and welcome to the FM Podcast. I'm Jen Fritz, and I run Fritz Media, a music publicity and digital marketing firm located in Vancouver, Canada. And this is episode number 10 of the podcast. So a few weeks ago, we did an episode about the state of music journalism in Canada, and I talked to my buddy Mike Devlin, who's an arts reporter for the Victoria Times-Colonist. And on this week's episode, it's kind of a state of music journalism in Canada part 2 episode. And we're going to take a look at music journalism in the digital age and explore the online side of things, since we mostly discuss music journalism at traditional publications in Mike's episode, since, you know, he works at a newspaper. It's just kind of how it happened. And joining me today is Sajae Elder, who is a Toronto-based culture writer and content creator for The Fader, Complex, Vice, Buzzfeed, and many others. Sajae and I discuss what music journalism looks like in the online space in 2021, whether music journalism is still relevant, and what it's like to be a Black woman working as a culture journalist in Canada. We had a really great chat, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Here's my conversation with Sajae Elder. Hello, Sajae. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You're in Toronto, right?
I am, yeah.
And how's things in Toronto? What's the weather like? What's going on?
It wasn't sunny at all today, which was like kind of gloomy and blah, but at least it's not snowing or, cold as it was months past, so can't complain.
Yeah, it's the upside, right? As long as it's not snowing.
Exactly.
So you and I, we've never met before, and I was kind of email introduced to you by Erin Ashley because I was trying to book her on the show, but she's got a brand new job right now, so she's just too busy. And she recommended that I reach out to you because I was looking for someone to talk to about music journalism on the digital side of things. So she thought that you would be good for that. And I was obviously looking for someone that wasn't just, a white guy. Music journalism filled with white guys.
Right.
So looking at your bio, it looks like you do a lot of creative things. But for the purposes of this interview, you're a culture writer and content creator for The Fader, Complex, Vice, Buzzfeed, and many others. How did you get your start as a writer and content creator?
I feel like I probably started where a lot of people started, which is like, working for free and like blogging and kind of doing things more so from a passion perspective. And then I would say I kind of maybe fell into music journalism. An editor from Noisy was following me on Twitter and like thought I was funny and thought that I could handle a piece about Rihanna that he was trying to commission.
Right.
And just kind of reached out to me and was like, oh, I think you should write this thing because, I think your takes are funny, your music takes are, interesting. So I kind of like weirdly stumbled into it via social media, I guess, is like the best way I could describe it.
That's an interesting way to go into it because it's coming from a humorous perspective more than from like the original, like, I want to write about music sort of angle. How long have you been doing it now? I
guess professionally, it's for about 6 years. But I've definitely, put in my fair share of like writing for free and for random blogs and stuff like that. So probably closer to like 11 or 12 years, just like on different websites. But for money, the last 6 years.
Right. People are paying me 6 years. Yes.
Yeah.
And, since you have started, how have things changed for you? Like, were you just straight up writing at first and then it turned into maybe doing more content creation and strategy, or how did that work? Yeah.
So I was definitely like, just writing at the beginning. And then I also, kind of these other things I also kind of randomly fell into when it comes to like branded content or, doing like social media stuff or video stuff. It's always just kind of like, oh, you're on the team, or do you want to like take on this extra thing? And it's usually pretty random. I've mostly been a freelancer or like a quote unquote permalancer in most of the places that I'm in, so I'm never like officially staffed, but it's always like, oh, do you want to take on this like extra project for another $500 or whatever? So it's always been like really kind of offhand things, and normally it comes out of me kind of doing it on my own for free, like as a passion project, in other avenues, whether it's for myself or for friends. And then, somebody will get wind and be like, oh, you did this thing. So, I feel like you could take on this paid project kind of thing. That's normally how it's worked out for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So as someone who's a freelancer or permalancer, as you say, I like that. Do you tend to get pitched things directly from like, you know, publicists or people like me, or does it come down from the editor of whatever publication that you're writing for?
It's definitely mostly like from publicists, from artists. Like my email is kind of a war zone for most of the.
Oh, I can only imagine.
So definitely a war zone for most of the day. Yeah, so it's definitely like directly from publicists or labels or management. And there's always a few in there that I have like good relationships with that I'm always like, okay, I know they always send good things. And yeah, like there will be a few things that my editor will specifically want me to write about, but normally it's like coming from publicists or coming from artists or yeah, or like, you know, when it's bigger feature stories, it's definitely kind of something that's, you know, rattling around in my own brain from things I'm listening to or that I'm watching that I'm kind of curious to dive deeper into. So it's like a combination of those two.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I know, like, just from when I started working in the music industry, things are so different. You know, things move very fast these days. Yeah. And, you know, now there's a lot fewer places for music journalism. Like, you know, daily newspapers don't have music writers anymore. We keep losing magazines, alternative weeklies, music blogs. And that obviously has an overall effect on the culture. Where do you think we're headed in terms of music journalism? It's a big question, I know.
Yeah, like I think it's so tricky because I definitely remember like 10 years ago when like everyone had their like own music blog and there was definitely way more platforms, but I think it's just going to move to different platforms. Like it's you know, I remember a couple years ago there was that pivot to video that didn't, you know, curl.
Went nowhere.
Yeah, it didn't curl all the way over, but I do think it's going to pivot to other platforms. Like I'm seeing, I was reading an article about like, there's all these like Gen Z kids that are doing TikTok. Like they're doing like a music blog, but it's like on TikTok. So they're just like, you know, talking about different artists that they've discovered or they like or whatever. So it's, you know, it's similar to, you know, writing an article of like 250, 300 words, but they're just saying it in a TikTok and playing the music in the background, which is super cool. So yeah, I think it's just going to go to other platforms. That's really how a lot of people are discovering music. I'll hear songs on the radio and I'm like, oh, it's that TikTok song. So I think it's just going to move. It's just going to move to different platforms. It's just going to move to where the eyes and the ears are. Not to say people still don't read, because I definitely think people still want like long form content. They still want to read, like they still want to deep dive into like, okay, what is this artist's like life story kind of thing. But I think the discovery aspect of it is definitely going to be like just on like really quick, way more easily consumable platforms like, you know, TikTok or playlists. Playlist algorithms are usually pretty good at figuring out like what people like and stuff like that. So it's just going to move in different directions. Yeah,
no, that totally makes sense. You know, like when I was growing up, and I'm assuming I'm older than you, I looked to magazines like NME and Spin and Rolling Stone to find out about new music. And obviously the internet's kind of blurred the boundaries on that. Right. I mean, like we have a blurring, you know, between traditional music writers and then, you know, anyone with a blog can call themselves a music writer, or anyone on TikTok, as you say, can kind of do that. So, you know, to your point, do you think that it's, you know, if this is the way we're going, then I guess maybe traditional music journalism isn't really all that relevant, or maybe it'll just live in different ways?
Yeah, I think it'll just live in different ways. And I think the need for like, people still want analysis. I think, like I said, people still want the deep dives into artists' lives. They still want that big story. They still want analysis from, you know, I don't like to use the word gatekeeper because I feel like it has a negative connotation, but I guess I could say curators. Like, you know, there were always writers that we would read, you know, specific magazines we would read and different writers' opinions that we would trust as far as like, okay, if they say it's, you know, 5 stars and it's probably a good album or whatever the case. So yeah, I think people still look for that, especially because there's so much content. Like you need someone to kind of guide you.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I always say that like most of my best like music recommendations are word of mouth. Like it's usually people being like, yo, listen to this person. Like I don't.
Same.
Yeah. Like it's always, you know, some offhand conversation and I'm like, oh, I actually like this. So Yeah, I don't know if it could ever be irrelevant. I think people will always desire the need for analysis and want that kind of cultural critique, but I think it'll just look different. It'll have to live differently. It'll look a lot more specialized.
Yeah.
And I think the line between like, a culture writer and just a music blogger, it'll become more defined. Like it'll be more of a pronounced difference.
Yeah, and I think that even, I see a lot of bigger publications becoming more niche, and just like sticking with a genre, and that like that's what I'm going to focus on. Those are the ones that are successful.
Right.
So, I think we're seeing a lot more of that because there is just too much content. There's so much content.
Every day, all the time. Like every Friday, I'm like, oh, I have like all these albums I have to listen to, and sometimes you feel like I feel like I have to catch up on releases, and yeah, it's always something.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, like you say with the TikTok, I mean, social media definitely has something to do with that, especially when the artist can basically control their own narrative at this point. They don't have to look to writers to tell the story all the way for them.
Right.
I guess, right? Which, brings me to like a bigger question is like, what does that mean for people like me, for music publicists? I know myself and a lot of my colleagues, we've done the big pivot. We've, for myself, my company's just like added other services like social strategy and digital marketing. Some PR firms are trying different things. I don't know. I guess that's too big of a question, but like I think I'm wondering how it's gonna work like down the road. Like, are we still gonna be pitching things to people like you, or are people just gonna become their own curators and decide what they're gonna write about on their own?
Right. I'm not sure. Like I think one thing that is important is that I feel like I don't know if there's been like a disconnect between like a lot of like writers and publicists in the last, like, I would definitely say in the most recent years. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that will look in the future, but I think that there has to be a lot more dialogue between how rapidly like music media is changing, because I'm not sure if publicists I'm sure they're watching, but I'm always kind of curious as to like kind of if we're on the same page in a lot of ways. I think sometimes I always wonder, like I think sometimes a lot of publicists still think that like, a lot of these publications are like still very well staffed, and it's like, 40 people in an office listening to music all day, when it's usually, a bunch of freelancers all over everywhere that have like, other jobs, full-time jobs. And it's just like such a different landscape than maybe, it was pitching music to us 10 years ago. So I think for kind of a seamless future, I definitely think there has to be a lot more back and forth dialogue as to like what the landscape looks like now on both ends. Cause I'm sure there's things about music publicity that I don't know, or that writers don't know in general. So I think for a future that kind of makes sense for both sides, like there has to be a lot more dialogue as to what's going on.
No, that totally makes sense. And I mean, just from my side too, it looks, the same way as in terms of like, we don't have those direct people to pitch anymore. We're always looking to find the freelancers. So, so I think there's just scrambling on both ends, and a lot of like people it's managing expectations, basically, right? Like this is a different world we live in. You're not going to get the same results that, maybe you did before. And we just have to be a little more patient, I think, is probably it. So I know from as long as I've been working in the industry, that the world of music journalism, I mean, the music industry in general isn't the most diverse place. I mean, it's getting better, but it's a bit slow. What's your experience been as a Black woman working as a music writer?
It's been, I think the best way I could describe it is interesting. I guess the one thing that I can think of is how many, other Black women writers that I know that are freelance versus how many are staffed. It's always such a, that number is always such a crazy ratio as compared to, what a lot of these mastheads look like. And I think it can definitely be frustrating to feel like, especially if you're someone that you're a Black person that writes about Black music, but it's sometimes it feels impossible to even get into these publications, and it's like, okay, this is a hip hop publication. Why does this masthead look this way, or why does it feel like there's no one here that looks like me that works here? So it can be discouraging in some respects, but I would say in the last few years, it's all about finding the right editors to kind of align yourself with. I've been fortunate enough to kind of be in fellowship with editors that go out of their way to amplify the voices to amplify marginalized voices. So that's normally what it comes down to is kind of, you almost have to kind of reframe your goals in a way. Sometimes it's not about getting that staffed position at a publication, which is obviously security is great, but sometimes it's more so about aligning yourself with the right editors and the right publications, and freelancing a little bit more than other people may have to, but sometimes you kind of have to reframe what success looks like. So that's kind of what I had to do. I've kind of put it out of my head to be staffed somewhere, like as a writer, especially now with like how many publications are paring down and don't exist anymore. So yeah, I would say it has its like pros and cons, where it's definitely been frustrating in some respects, but through that frustration, I feel like I've also been fortunate enough to align myself with like editors and other writers who are in the same space, and kind of, we all help each other. Like we kind of network laterally and all help each other. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So you're not only a music writer and content creator, you seem to have your hands in all kinds of creative things. I'm wondering what you can tell me about that. Like, I see you've made podcasts and curated art shows. You're doing lots of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I've done a little bit of everything. I feel like most creative people are normally kind of curious about like all kinds of different things. I always think about the fact that Beyonce is apparently a really good painter, but just doesn't show anyone her artwork. Yeah, like she always talks about in interviews how like she paints to like relax, but like it's just like a personal thing for her. She doesn't show anyone her artwork. So I feel like most creative people are kind of like ambidextrous in that way, where like we like doing a bunch of different things. Yeah, like and also I feel like for a lot of people that kind of came up doing DIY things or independent things, there's a lot of things that we just did and we didn't even know that it had a name. Like when I was making the podcast, like I didn't understand that what I was doing was being a producer. I was just like, choosing the topics and inviting guests and doing all these different things. But like, I had no idea that what I was doing was like segment production.
Right.
And then the same thing with the art show. Like, it's just like, a cool thing where you have friends that make cool art and you find a space and blah, blah, blah. But you don't understand that you're curating at the time. So there's definitely a lot of things that I've done just like, out of the passion or out of fun with a bunch of my friends. And then you realize after, I'm like, oh no, that's like a job that people do. So yeah, it's definitely been a lot of that, which is cool. But like in the moment, it just feels like something fun and cool to do with your friends.
But you're gaining a really creative skill set along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I think creative people are like that. They're just got their hands in everything.
Yeah.
A lot of it is passion. And you're just like, I'll try that. I'll do that. Absolutely. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
All right. So now I think it's a good time to move on to our fresh content segment. Now, every week on the show, we discuss our favorite piece of music content for the week. And we always like to start with the guest.
Okay.
So what do you got for us?
So actually, it is new. It's an album that just came out today. This artist that goes by Serpent with Feet. He just dropped an album called Deacon today. And it's really nice. Like it feels really warm, the album. It's like very like gospel inspired R&B. There's elements of like electronica in it as well. And I really like that. So basically the whole album is about love. So like different kinds of love, romantic, familial, spiritual, and like platonic. And apparently he purposely like didn't want to write about heartbreak at all, which is like super different for R&B in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So the album just feels really like warm and loving. Like it feels like a hug. So it's just like really, I've been listening to it all day long. So that's kind of like where my headspace has been.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. You found something new and you can't turn it off.
Yeah.
That's like the best thing, right? That's kind of where my fresh content is for this week too. Mine is the new song from St. Vincent called Pay Your Way in Pain. And it's the same thing. I can't stop listening to it. It's a great track. It reminds me a little bit of Prince because it's got a little bit of funk to it.
Nice.
And I've seen other people make some Bowie comparisons, but I think that that's just because the way she says pain is kind of like fame. So I think that that's where it's coming from. But either way, it's a jam, and I really like it. So you can find that on your favorite streaming platforms. Cool. You can find both things there.
Check that out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for taking the time. I do really appreciate it. And I'm wondering if you have anything that you would like to plug.
What should I plug? Not regularly, but every, couple weeks, I curate this playlist called Deep Work. So it's a very chill playlist. It has R&B and electro and Afro beats and a lot of laid back, really groovy stuff on it. So yeah, I guess that's I would say that.
You're also a playlist curator on top of everything else. Yeah. That's amazing. I love it. Well, again, thanks for taking the time, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Great conversation, right? I hope you like that. It was really good to talk to Sajae and to get to know her a little bit. Thanks so much for listening to the FM podcast. If you like the show, please tell your friends and give us a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. The FM podcast is produced by Fritz Media. If you want to learn more about Fritz Media, check out our website at fritzmedia.ca. And you can follow us on Facebook. We're at Fritz Media. And on Instagram and Twitter at Fritz_media. And if you want to learn more about the podcast, just go to thefmpodcast.com. And thank you to Said the Whale for providing the theme music for the show. If you want to learn more about them, you can go to saidthewhale.com. Okay, so we're going to go out with our song of the week this week. And since our fresh content suggestions had a little bit of an R&B flavor to them, I thought I'd continue in that direction with Fritz Media artists Matt Storm and Ivan Hartle. This is their collab single that came out last November. Here's More to Find.
Reminiscing on my everyday, trying to find a way to make it stay. In my mind, don't let it get away. But I think that it is only fear, or is this a thing that always keeps me here? Or should I take it slow? 'Cause all this second guessing got me stressing, and I don't even know. Is my mind all that I got inside? Or is there something more to find? Yeah. They say the past is just a story that we tell ourselves. Maybe I can rewrite what was written for me. Yet if the future never comes, then I'm just stuck here with myself. Why do I feel like I should run, chasing after something, but it's nothing, yes, it's all in my head. It's my mind, all in my all that I got inside. Or is there something more to find? Is there something more to find? Is my mind, all that I got inside. Or is there something more to find? I might be empty-handed. Yeah,
Bye. I'll see you next Tuesday.